Hey, kia ora. Welcome, welcome. As always, we'll kick off with the karakia whakataki me karakia tātou to arrive from our spaces and places together to hear karakia whakataki. Ko te kawa o runga, ko te kawa o raro, ko te kawa ora, ko te kawa ora. E rongo whakairihia ki runga, turuturu o whiti whakamaua ki a tēnā. Huie tai ki e. Ko milla inkilä taku ingoa no Fiinarana ahau kei Academy EX taku mahi kei kirikiriroa enoho ahau enoho ana. I recognize some of the faces, those ones that have your videos on through the years of working for Academy EX, which I've been now doing for 11 years. The accent comes from Finland. And I'm counting the days to go there with the 6-year-old. 18 mornings. That's what she's been counting now too. I work for the Master of Contemporary Education team, and I just recently did my own second master's. So one of the things that I'll chat today relates to that one. So Master of Change and Organizational Resilience. So kind of double role, yeah, Academy EX staff member, but also an alumni. So yeah, that's me in short, and I am joined with Kerry. Over to you. Up, you're muted still. Up.
Ko Kerry tōku ingoa, no ahi te reiria ahau, ko o Kairis tōku hoa rangatira, ko hoani oku tāne, ko arawhiu rawa ko hene awe oku tamahine, ko makaire oku mokopuna, kei here taunga oku kainga. So my name is Kerry. I was born in Australia, and I've put a little circle around Ashmore, which is on the Gold Coast there. That's where I spent the first 11 years of my life. I now currently live in Hastings with all my whānau there. That's a particular Christmas where we were dressed up as in things that related to the letter R. And that's my husband and I there at Cape Reinga, where we went for a bit of a drive up there a couple of years ago. And that's our gorgeous moko in the corner there with his cool glasses. And that's me. I'm an alumni. Yeah, got my master's in January this year, and I work. I'm not teaching anymore. I work as a content writer. So that's my mahi at the moment. It's nice to be here.
Fine. Lovely to have you here, and lovely for all of you to be here too. So we'll hopefully have some brave discussions, since we are talking about braver spaces and dialogic learning. We'll give you a bit of an intro. We'll start with that for both of those topics. We were planning to do breakout rooms. Let's see if we are all staying here in the big room. Let's see how many of us are here at that point, or do we do separate breakout rooms? But one about how to create braver spaces for our students, and then one on how to create those for us educators. So one of those kind of relates a bit more to Kerry's research. So Kerry will share lessons learned relating to that, and I'll do the same with my mahi, then relating to us educators. So that's the plan. And to start with, I thought I'll share how I came across with this mahi. So that's a picture from Järvenpää, where I'm from. That's 2 years ago. A good old friend Pekka was organizing this rhythm and movement week, and right, like I timed my holiday so that I was there, which was amazing. Oh, people all over the world coming to dance together and just move in the same rhythm or different rhythm time to time. But that picture is from a morning session that Pekka was running, and he kind of started that by saying like, oh, remember this is a safe place. And then one of my old tap dance teachers, gosh, it sounds like I dance a lot. I actually started as an adult. Even she was teaching me as an adult tap dance teacher. But she said that, ah, remember, Pekka, you can't say that. And then like, ah, Pekka's like, what? That you can say that you can try to create it or make it a safer space, but you
Mm.
can't guarantee a place is safe for everyone, especially if you come from so that yeah, no one is kind of yeah making it unsafe for you to assume that just by saying the place is safe that it would make it safe. It was interesting because it felt really safe, and the whole school where we were, it had like these beautiful eternity signs in the kind of gender neutral toilets, and it was yeah just amazing. But it really made me think what she was saying about safe spaces, and I kind of yeah it spoke to me. And then I had coffee after that. Finnish people drink coffee all the time, so every dance session there was always coffee after. So they drink the most coffee in the world statistically. Um, and just kind of chatting with her, like, where does it come from? Like, ah, oh, is that a big discussion? And it seemed to be more in Finland around that time than yet in here. And one of the documents that helped me a lot on kind of understanding it a bit better was this one that I'm quoting here. So educators Brian Arau and Christy Clemens are the ones who had started to talk about braver spaces already perhaps 10 years ago. They wrote about this in a book, but then it has been republished many, many times. And I'm quoting for the 2023 version actually here, and but the 2013 was the original. And what they are writing and kind of proposing is that they are saying to revise our language, shifting away from the concept of safety and emphasizing the importance of bravery instead, to help students better understand and rise to the challenges of genuine dialogue on diversity and social justice issues. Quite a brave suggestion. Um, but they're saying that learning necessarily involves not merely a risk, but the pain of giving up a former condition in favor of a new way of seeing things. The, when I pose this to Kerry, like Kerry, you were saying like, ah, oh, do we need first safety? And then can we be brave? And that's definitely one way of looking at it, could be. And even these writers don't say that we wouldn't need safe spaces, that yes, they're really, really, really important if the world is such around you that like usually it's not safe. So it's really important to be able to be in safe places. But for example, for those of us, like I'm a Pakeha cis heterosexual woman,
Mm.
a lot of that kind of just assuming I just fit in quite easily. The but the thing is that there should be a place, for example, for me to be brave, for me to have the courage to change assumptions and talk about things that I would, for example, need to change in my thinking. That's what I've been thinking a lot while reading that. But a really good paper. That's why I'm quoting that, and that's where the whole idea of perhaps moving from safe to safer, perhaps, and then perhaps even to braver spaces. And when I saw Kerry presenting on January, like panicking, were you panicking? You were a little bit, and you were amazing in our MCE doing the presentation. I was just blown away of what you've done for your research. The two things that I thought about while listening to Kerry's presentation then was one was Paul Freire, who like already half a decade ago had said that without dialogue there is no communication, and without communication there can be no true education. That yeah, he talked about that for ages ago already, but still we sometimes forget that. Here I am, I haven't yet had dialogue with you, I'm just kind of presenting here. But yeah, the other one, I'll let Kerry talk also and add into this soon. The other one that I thought about is Gert Biesta. And some of you have been students on DCL or MCE. It could be that I've actually quoted Biesta before, but Biesta is saying that education should be about creating opportunities for students to be in dialogue with the world, with real people, and not just about mastering predefined knowledge. And kind of, we talk about knowledge, kind of, it actually is perhaps created between us, that we don't own the knowledge, but it's actually here in dialogue and so on. Though those are the things that Kerry's presentation sparked my thinking, but I know you went a lot deeper in the dialogic learning, so I'll let you continue how to define that.
Thank you, Mila. Yeah, so I decided to start with this quote really because it was one that I came across amongst a pile of research on dialogic pedagogy and dialogic teaching, but this one I particularly liked because it talks about kind of the 5 sort of dimensions that I discovered were really important in implementing a dialogic pedagogy. And this quote sums it up, is that it's a pedagogy that values questioning. So educators need to be prepared for or have already created and have that culture of curiosity and inquiry in their classrooms. It examines context, so we need to be thinking about where the discussions are taking place, how, what, why, those sorts of things. I'll talk more about this a little bit later in my lessons learned. It explores multiple perspectives, which is why it's an inclusive practice. It challenges hierarchical structures, which is one of the biggest unlearnings for us as educators, is to get off the stage and trust in our kids. And it views learning as a generative act. So it's about knowledge building. It's about building understanding together. And my research was done in the context of reading comprehension. I narrowed it right down to that context, but dialogic pedagogy and dialogic teaching, which I discovered, a lesson learned, is the skills are transversal. So I think that's actually the most sort of exciting thing about grabbing hold of this kaupapa, is that we saw what it did in a context of reading comprehension, but there's scope for this to be an approach to take cross-curricular whenever you want to have discussions with kids. So that's probably was one of the biggest learnings that came out of it. Yeah, so that's my little blurb on dialogic teaching. What are we doing next, Mila?
We were thinking
Oh,
of checking where did you come from today? So how much did you know? Some of you know, Kerry. Are these things new to you today when we are having discussions about these topics? So I'll do a quick Zoom poll. Uh, there's 2 of you behind one screen, so you'll have to decide how to answer answer to that. Statistically, somewhere there in the middle. I'll launch the poll there. There's just kind of how familiar were you? It's anonymous on purpose so that we know, like, are you very familiar, the whole safe spaces and brave spaces and dialogic learning? And tick the closest response. And we'll see where are we starting from? Good. Looks like most of you have submitted that. I'll end the poll and I'll share the results so that you can see. You should be able to see them on the screen now. Yep. So, oh, nice spread, kind of all around. Yeah, safe spaces seems to be more familiar than braver spaces. Um, but then dialogic learning, oh, the whole spread. So yeah, lovely, lovely. Not that many of us here tonight. Many seems like most people choose to view the recording. But that's nice that we have a good diversity here. I'll stop sharing that. And the discussion we were thinking of doing was this. Um, any thoughts from those of you who are joining today? Which one would you prefer? Would you prefer us to put you in a breakout room to have these discussions, or should we have them here in the big room with all of us? Since we're kind of, yeah, 50-50.
Okay, we'll go for the big room.
Big room? Ooh.
It's a bit
What about the other?
nerve-wracking.
It is new, but I think it fits with the theme. It fits with it. It requires bravery. Yeah. Indeed. Anyone else? Is there anyone who doesn't feel that brave? I totally understand that too. Do you want a breakout room instead? We can also do both. How are you feeling, Yvonne, for example, today? Are you fine chatting here in the big room? You're still muted. Yeah. Ah, it's still muted. Ah, let's see. Seems like you're talking, but we couldn't hear you. And could be that some of you, could be that there's, for example, sorry, Yvonne, that I'm talking on top of you because you're still muted. Iseta, and there's Asia Catherine. Any thoughts from you that don't have your videos on? What we can do also is that we can talk the ones that are in a space where we can. Oh no, Yvonne, you managed to unmute. Oh no, now it's muted again. Oh. But maybe we'll stay here. Yeah, maybe we'll do that. We'll be brave. Yeah, up high. Introducing yourself, and then this is a nice kind of, the prompt came from you, Kerry, which I like, that examples of when you have organized a discussion about a text or provocation. Like, can you remember what worked well, what could have been done differently to create a braver space? Tell who you are and where you're coming from to this Mahien discussion, and then can you think of something? Does something come to mind relating to that? Do we start from the brave ones that wanted to have
it? Well, are you going, Kerry? No, you are. Oh, me? Okay. Okay, so the example I'm thinking of is the read aloud, which I've only been able to do through Kerry and Sandra, and the fact that actually Sandra or Kerry have organized the authors, it creates a really authentic feel for the kids, and to have those questions beforehand so that people can actually think about it actually creates a little bit more of a better discussion. Although that bravery, you talk about bravery, and when the kids are first given the opportunity to be on a Zoom, it's incredibly stilted, isn't it, the conversations, and it's really quite hard. But it's got to the point that even when mine, like I think I'm going off track. It's all right. Sorry, go.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, of course.
Do you think the discussion becomes stilted because the kids don't know each other?
Partly, and also the fact that, oh my goodness, these kids aren't actually here. That they're not stilted. They don't. I find that it's the technology that makes it hard for them. But by after that experience, it's interesting where the really shy ones will go, oh, actually, I think I'm going to have a go next week, you know. And I think it's about practice, isn't it? It's about practice and realizing that nothing actually happens. You know, the sky doesn't fall in. You know, we're not Chicken Little, whatever it was. Yeah.
Do you do anything in particular to set up your environment to make it a safer space?
A braver space. I guess what I do. I guess to just say that it's okay to just be in the background and listen, and it's usually the ones who are generally more out there personalities that will have a go first. But it's interesting that some of the ones who wait the longest, sometimes they have more to that they're quite good at listening to others, and actually, you know, feeding off a conversation as opposed to, I'm going to say something now, but I'm not going to listen to what you're going to say. You know, that sort of thing. I'm not sure if I've really covered the example.
Thank you. That was really good. That was really good. I noticed you, Asia, you, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, you were turning the video on, but now you turned the other video, other side on. Let's see, you were on the screen earlier, but now you're not.
No, that's not.
Anyone? Did you want to go?
Oh,
Sandra?
Yep. So lucky me, I have known Kerry for quite a few years now, and had the pleasure of working alongside her. And actually, the Dialogic, I was one of her participants in the group in her masters. So I've had a lot of learning, going in and letting the kids set up their own space and creating their own kaupapa around that was one of the biggest things that I did, that worked for them, because they said that they were a little bit nervous initially, but then when they came together and created this environment for themselves, it was much more open. They felt much more open and sharing. So that was a big thing in starting it, because like Jacqueline, I had been running Read Aloud for a number of years and hadn't really thought about the questioning. I was doing a lot of the questioning with the kids, giving some feedback and forward and creating some of the questions themselves, but giving them their own space made them actually take control of their own learning and their own questions, and then they were more empowered to have those discussions. So the dialogic aspect of it, the back and forth conversation, came about due to the cards. I have to say that Kerry's cards, the talk moves.
I'm going to talk about those later, yeah.
Oh, well, they were a really big thing that helped me to step back and go, actually, I don't need to be a part of this. The kids can do this on their own. And they loved doing it on their own. So now in my classroom, the kids have dialogic discussions all the time without me. And it was a trust thing. So I just had to trust them. And I trusted them early on, which they said was better because it made the conversations flow more readily, because initially they were a little bit worried. You know, they weren't worried that I was there, but they were still trying to do the right thing. Whereas when I wasn't there, the conversation flowed, even though sometimes they said they digressed and then came back on the highway. They got better at it, so the conversations became better. What else I've done differently? So I think the space, like you were saying, Mila, is really, really important. And Kerry, I know that you think the same. And creating that space does take time. And you know, you're throwing kids together. Like I threw this group of kids together because they put their hand up to do it, and they were just like, now they didn't hardly know each other. They didn't hang out with each other in the playground or anything. Now they're together all the time, and they actually love their own little group.
You're giving away all my lessons.
Oh, stop. Okay, I'll stop talking. Yeah. Yeah, it's been, yeah, so there's an example. I've done it through Read Aloud. I've done it in other areas as well, but without Kerry, I couldn't have done it, to be honest. Thank you, Kerry. And there's still things that I can work on, trust me.
You did. Asia, is there something you would like to add on? Where are you coming from to this, Mahi?
First of all, sorry for all the camera issues. I'm on my
Good.
phone because I'm on maternity leave, so I don't have a laptop and I can't figure out how to work anything. But yeah, I mean, I'm basically just here to listen. I think the main issue that I face is that I'm teaching in an open environment. And so the creating the space within a classroom is a little bit more difficult when you're not in a classroom. So I suppose I'm kind of hoping that there'll be something that I can use to get it to still work in that kind of environment.
Really good point. Really good point. Is there anyone else, it's okay to be quiet? When you were talking, Sandra, it made me think of I've been just reading Becoming Tangata Tiriti, working with Maori honoring the treaty, where I've highlighted 10 times the part where they quote and say that I think in a lot of Pakeha spaces the expectation is to contribute by being vocal. And then just as that, actually listening, so crucial, and could be that those of you that are quiet actually contribute to the dialogue at the end, and yeah, put the strings together and so on, break them nicely. So that's okay also to be there to listen today. And you can, at any point, if you want to pop something to the chat, for example, you can do that too. And I think maybe over to you, Kerry, so that you can, those things that Sandra didn't share yet. Yeah, you can share your lessons learned from.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, all good. Yeah, no, I've got some lessons learned. Yeah, so the Dialogic Highway, just very briefly, the Dialogic Highway is the name of the discussion framework that I created to use with my participants in my action research project. So I've called it the Dialogic Highway. And if you want sort of more of the background of all of that, I think the link to the website that I've started this website. It's a gamified framework. I've sort of used words from the gaming world to try and make it motivational and all the rest of it. So it's the name of the framework. So the lessons learned, I've related these to those 5 dimensions from that previous quote. And this quote here is from one of my participants. And to me, this is one of the biggest lessons learned, is the importance of having your classroom as an inquiry focused thinking place where kids are always given opportunities to ask questions and not only answer questions. Yeah, so and if they're in that kind of a space and it's normal within every day at school, then participating in dialogic discussions then becomes easier for them because they're used to questioning. They're used to having a conversation about something that they don't know. And like that quote says, you know, if we want our kids to be able to question things because we're not always right. And if you've got that culture in your classroom, that's going to help a lot with the dialogic discussions. The second quote here is from the kids. They talked heaps. This is like 5 quotes from the kids, but they talked a lot about the space and the co-construction of the game. We call them game rules. They're like the the rules for the discussion norms. So in the implementation phase of the action research, we talked a lot about co-constructing those norms with your group. And this was what the kids said about that. And this was one of the other really, really big learnings, was that teachers need to put the time in to doing this part, because if you skim over this part, it's sort of implying that it's not that important. So you need to spend the time, teachers need to spend the time to set up this co-construction of the discussion norms, because then the kids realize how important it is. And the other thing with this is to revisit these every time you have a discussion. So every time you start a discussion, revisit your game rules and get the kids to talk about those. The third, there's lots of learnings, but I've just put them into these 3 bundles. I could go on forever. The kids, this is a kid's quote, that idea that in the reading context that we were working in, that kids could share their perspectives and gain understanding from other people's points of view, was huge for the kids. The kids, I don't know whether it's because they hadn't done a lot of that before, but the kids talked a lot about being able to listen to other people's perspectives. And like they say in this quote, it helped them go deeper into the text that we were talking about. So that was learning number 3. Learning number 4 is about that challenging of hierarchical structures. And this was a teacher quote here, and it was hilarious at the time for me, because it was like, that's what we all do. It's like, oh, my kids aren't talking about what I want them to talk about in this text. They shouldn't be talking about blah, blah, blah. They should be talking about blah, blah, blah. And so this particular teacher was in this phase of unlearning that actually I don't need to stop them. I can let them go and they can talk about the things that are important to them in the text. There's heaps more I could say about that, but lesson learned number 5, because I want to listen to Mila's stuff as well. The whole idea of collaboration was huge for the kids. Reading is often a solo kind of thing in classrooms. We're going to read silently. We're going to answer a set of questions by ourselves. But this whole concept of actually getting together with a group of kids to learn together, and this is one quote from like heaps that I got from the kids about what it felt like to listen to other people's ideas and to learn to build on other people's suggestions and opinions and think about things in a different way. I've got a page of stuff I could talk about, but yeah, those are the key things. But just that last thing was that you hit on before, Mila, is the dialogic discussions, where the kids made a choice to contribute on their own terms, when they felt safer, when they felt braver, rather than like what we normally do is like, you're going to pick the kid with the hand up, or alternatively, you're going to pick the kid who hasn't got their hand up because you think they should be sharing something. The mana enhancing kind of aspect of this is that I will choose to contribute when I feel safe and brave to do it. Yeah.
What I remember from your January presentation, I don't know, I think it was a girl that you kind of said that, who kind of never realized that her voice and her view on some stories was like, it was never the right one, and then she realized that actually it is her like important view, and that was just, yeah, I still get chills. I'm not sure how
I did come across that quote in my numerous folder of quotes today, and I didn't put it in, but Yes, lots of kids talked about my voice is important. I liked my voice being heard, and that's because the culture was set up that that listening is just as important as talking. Yeah. Kia ora, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my research.
Thank you, Kerry. Are there any questions that come to mind relating to those lessons learned that you want to ask from Kerry before we talk about brave and safer spaces for us as educators? We'll share our contact details at the end, so you can do that with Kerry or me, yeah, anyone at any point. If not now.
So,
Oh,
can I,
yep.
can I ask something? So, if you're, how do you, is it just a matter of discussing with kids about what we are trying to create as an overview, or to generate that feeling of being able to discuss and have that freedom of either not contributing or contributing? Yeah, I mean, yes, introducing this idea.
So in my implementation phase of all of this, I put a huge emphasis for my participants to go right back to talking with the children about what is learning. And so I got them to go right back to that point and start at that point there, what is learning? Can we learn through talk? There was a whole raft of suggested questions to talk with the kids about before you even went in and co-constructed the game rules, because I wanted to make sure the teachers actually got an idea from their kids about where they felt the place of talk was in the learning process, because often a silent classroom is considered one that's doing lots of work and lots of learning. And so I wanted the teachers to go back and say, okay, what is the place of talk and learning? And so we started right back there, right back at that point. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but there's a lot of implementation that went on before the dialogic discussions took place.
I wasn't very concise, but you actually have. Thank you.
She wanted to know
Bye.
how.
Bye. I'll show you also a couple of kind of lists, for example, what makes a safe place and a brave space. I have those, but just to summarize a bit what my research ended up being. So my heading was supporting educators in gender inclusion, and it ended up being also in unlearning, a word that Kerry, you for example used earlier today. When we are set in our ways, then we need to let go and unlearn. And what ended up being the deliverable in the end in my change project was a podcast, something that I didn't realize at the beginning it would be that. But I did a podcast, and there's one particular episode that might be interesting to you, which is I did that with Chelsea, who also studied IMCO at the same time. And we did an episode, what do we mean when we speak about creating safe and brave spaces? So we talk about in that, for example, why there is also a need for safe spaces, but perhaps what the brave spaces are. So that's one of the discussions. And what ended up being the biggest unlearning was moving beyond cis paralysis. So that's for me, my focus was in gender inclusion. And I noticed that teachers knew what transgender is, but they didn't have the word for cisgender. That was the biggest divider. We knew the Western terms, we didn't know the Ao Maori Pacifica terms when it comes to gender and more fluid views on gender. And I named it cis paralysis, that fear of like saying something wrong and then not doing something because we thought that it's not correct. So some of you might know Pakeha paralysis. We talked about that a lot in DCL and MCE. Comes from that, the same thing, kind of similar privilege stopping us to actually acting and doing things differently. And I recognized that within. I thought that I'm such an open-minded educator, such cis-normative and heteronormative, and then like in so many things that it takes a lot of unlearning and shaking to realize that how do I need to act, speak, do things so that it lines up with my values. I realized that there's like a big difference, and just being quiet and not doing something is not actually acting through my values. This is one list of how to create a safe space. So agreeing to disagree, not taking things personally, challenging by choice, having respect and not attacking, which have been, they're nice rules. They have been kind of agreed for a really, really long time. But to show you what the braver spaces takes those a bit further, kind of, yes, similar things, but saying that we should seek understanding, not escape for difficult discussions or things that we are not even sure as educators. To owning our intentions and impact. Yes, good intentions matter, but our words and actions and inaction, unaction also affects. And leaning into that discomfort, that we know that learning happens when we are out of our comfort zone. So that whole bravery and that, like I have a quote about vulnerability next, that those are important. We talk about that all the time, that having the courage to do that as an educator so that our students can do the same thing. And respect through engagement was one of the things that they talked about. Not just being polite, but to listen, to learn, to challenge ideas thoughtfully. And then also challenging perspectives. So not critiquing ideas or people, but challenging the perspectives to see that there's so many perspectives, that there's no one right answer to, for example, reading comprehension, which was a big thing, for example, in what I remember from Kerry's presentation also. This is the vulnerability quote, and this is a quote from my own research report in the end. And I wrote that I have quoted Brené Brown like so many times on kind of from Daring Greatly when she writes that the shaky feeling of vulnerability, that I recognize that in my own students, that kind of that we want to turn around so that we can go home where we can escape out the potential judgment of others and our own fear of the unfamiliar. And we don't do those things that we would want to do. And that's how I felt even just starting the podcast and putting my things out there, even if I teach teachers all the time. But it's good to realize that whenever we think about things that we are the bravest, we are actually thinking about those times that we were really vulnerable, that when we had the courage to do things differently, to actually act through our values, for example. And the other thinker that I wanted to share today, Brené Brown, I quote often. The other one is Parker J. Palmer, who writes, for example, that good teaching cannot be reduced to technique. Good teaching comes from the identity and integrity of the teacher. So also knowing who we are and knowing and acknowledging our privilege and acknowledging that our view is only one view of things. And that there's fear. He writes that fear is what distances us from our students, from our subjects, if we want to call them those, and even from ourselves. Fear shuts down those experiments with truth that allow us to view the web of connectedness into the classroom. It is, yeah, we kind of have to do it over and over again to jump over that fear. I was just teaching last night about change, leading change, and fear relates to change always, and change is required for learning. Yeah, that, yeah. The other discussion that we wanted to have, and there's a Padlet, so even those ones of you that have been listening and joining the Corero like that, you can also pop things into this Padlet or talk out loud. Where are the spaces for us educators to have braver discussions with each other?
Okay, so Mila, I don't know whether there fully are any spaces aside from my own friendships that I know that I can trust the people that I'm with. I struggle with sharing my thoughts and ideas with others for exactly what you were saying before, for fear of ridicule or saying the wrong thing or being judged. So that was a question I was going to ask you this evening, to how do you go about creating those as a leader for the people that you're working with?
Mm. Yeah, I think sometimes, for if you ask from me, that's my one viewpoint is to do it yourself. Like for example, that's kind of why I did my research and why I did our own masters was to practice what I preach, to put myself into that vulnerable position, and sometimes kind of to fail yourself, since we are so afraid of failing as educators that I feel like I like doing something so that I fail and I do something really dumb. I realized that after, like, I was a primary school teacher, and then I realized that in some ways it's even harder to fail in front of other educators and other adults, that I can even like ridicule myself. Like I remember like I actually didn't write that. I was a teacher and then I like decided just there were bunny ears, and I just went one day to my classroom and I just put those bunny ears, and I kind of treated it like I didn't have the bunny ears, just to make it a bit more fun for me and the kids that I was all of a sudden a bunny. And then one day when I was teaching adults, I realized that I should like, where are my bunny ears? Like, why don't? And then like, if someone like adults love the bunny ears even more, perhaps, and then I did try I had the bunny ears, but it took a while. But I don't know if the reaction was as easy as from the kids. But it is trickier. But yeah, is that an answer? I'm not sure, but yeah. But it is like it's one of those things that we have to do over and over again. Yeah.
And I think if, Sandra, if you're talking about how do you create those safer, braver spaces when you're leading adults, I think by, you sort of modeling fear or vulnerability, that goes a long way to creating a trusting environment with them. Because if they can see that you can be in those spaces in front of them, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It's just with a wider group, like say in a classroom setting, not in a staff room setting, Kerry. That's where I think it's harder.
Oh, like in an online kind of space.
I feel safer in an online space than I do in a classroom,
right
in a setting.
Interesting, because I know, Mela, you put a question out in LinkedIn a little while ago about is LinkedIn a space where teachers can discuss things? It was a question like that. And I replied to that because I think it could be a really great platform, but nobody does it.
Because it's in writing and putting yourself out there for other people to put down. And writing's differently than speaking to somebody, because when you're speaking to someone, your hand gestures and the way you share the thinking is completely different than when you write it. Often.
Yeah. But shouldn't we be able to write? Shouldn't we be able to feel safe in a space like LinkedIn if we're sharing our own personal opinion or idea about something?
Well, I guess as society, though, no one's safe online. That's the sort of feeling, isn't it? Though, because it will come back and bite you. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do know what you mean.
And
I think it's different when you're having a Zoom and you're talking to people than it is when you're writing it down, I think.
many times it's kind of those things that we fear that will come and bite you, actually, that do the opposite. It is. It's sometimes, yeah, that's what I try to remind myself. And when I see people doing those brave things, of course, there's like one of the things that I was thinking preparing for this is like there's I know that there's so many educators out there who are saying that it's also harder to have these discussions because there's kind of rising levels of hate and discrimination that we actually hear in our classrooms. The ones that have been brave and having these discussions for a long time, that there's more and more of that, which in a way shows that we need it even more than ever. That one, but we also need each other to support in that, so that we know that we're not alone. That's why I'm kind of thinking, yeah.
I think that stepping out of your comfort zone and having to put your head out and then sticking your neck out is a really big thing, especially in a hierarchical system, if there's a hierarchical system. So I feel that, yeah, I just feel that that's a harder place for me personally, you know, so you sort of do your own thing in your own space.
It's kind of like many times on our programs we talk about, for example, agency and giving students agency, and it's hard to give agency if you don't feel like you have agency on your work, and that's the tricky thing, and then kind of realize where we do have, and then yeah, even if it is then the living room of it looks like you're in your living room and with your friends, like that is a space where to have those discussions and to find a like-minded soul, that it could be one educator who actually helps in that, to realize that you are not alone. The same exact thing that we want for our students, so that they realize that they can actually speak their truth, and there's someone who accepts their truth and realizes that there's many ways of looking at things.
But always in the back of your mind, you're always thinking about, where is this going to go to, because this is being recorded.
Yeah, true. Somewhere good, I'd say. That's where it's going. Somewhere better. Just to kind of, I know that we have 5 minutes left. We're going to share where you can find more about us and yes, we're here as One Brave Space Academy EX. Be yourself, even if it is like we were chatting with Kerry, that sometimes, for example, since it's about whakawhanaungatanga, even having the courage to talk in the breakout rooms with other educators, even if it's exactly what you want, but to get to know those people that are on the program with you. But that's what we're here for. Could be that you've already done your studies. If you've done part 1, if you can join to part 2, do what Kerry did, and scholarships are closing. Isn't that so, Lisa? At the end of this week?
Yes, the 9th of
The 9th.
So you've got time. We have a limited number of 50% scholarships. So, and there is one that you'll be eligible for, because Tangata Whenua, Pacific Arco, Tai Peki over 60, and Impact, which is you guys. We see educators as servant leaders, so please think of that.
Indeed. And if there's any questions, Lisa is there to help. And if you know, like, just making sure that you get more of those people in your school, or push the other ones, even if they do just DCL, I'll promise to shake them a bit and try to create safer and braver spaces for them to have the discussions and having the courage to do things differently. The next part 1 intake for the DCL, that starts in August. But of course, they can also sign in for the whole master's journey straight away. But the scholarships are for both part 1 or just part 2 and part 3, available to all of those. And Lisa's phone number is there. Lisa's email is there, and then LinkedIn. Lovely what you talked about, Kerry, about LinkedIn. So we are there. You can even just post publicly and have discussions with us publicly on LinkedIn, or you can send private messages there. But that's the website, Kerry. So you're building that now little by little. You're muted still.
Sorry, yes, I'm building the website. Yes.
Cool.
But it's it's got some stuff there that people, from my big research thing and stuff. So yeah.
So our masters are like that. It's not a thing that sits and gathers dust on a shelf, but you actually do and trial and do things better and better and better in your practice. That's what the Masters is about.
I've also written the article for the SET journal.
Ah, true.
So hopefully that comes out soon.
Good. And that's where you can find my podcast. It's also in Spotify and so on. There's, hopefully some other useful episodes than just about the safe and braver spaces. Thank you for joining. And I want to acknowledge also those ones of you who were quiet and listening. It would be nice to hear your thoughts somehow. So please contact me and Kerry. What did you think? And I think I'll try to capture my thoughts after tonight. I'll share them somewhere, maybe in LinkedIn. Let's see, to create something good around this. And we'll share the slides with you later this week to the email that you used to RSVP for tonight, and most likely also the recording, so that you can also share that with others. But that's it for tonight. Thank you all for joining, and have a lovely, safe and brave week. Karakia whakakapi. Ka whakairia te tapu, kia wātea ai te ara. Kia turuki whakataha ai, kia turuki whakataha ai. Haumie huie, tai kie.
Thank you so much. Have a good evening. Bye.
Thanks, Mila.
Bye. Thank you. See ya. Ko Marie.
Ko Marie.
Starts to be late. And if there's any questions that you happen to have, for example, for Lisa, you can still ask now too if you have anything about studies or